Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Other Words, the Diamondback's Terp and men's basketball preview show. I'm Greg Schimmel, Diamondback's basketball columnist, here as usual with Eric Detweiler, our beat writer, here to preview tomorrow's Terps men's basketball game against NC State. Eric, we'll be back on the road again, second time in just a few days, heading down to Raleigh.
I keep writing about how tough this stretch is, how it's a rigorous 3-game and 5-day stretch, and then I just think about my own life, and it's tough on me too. So
It is tough.
it's something we're all dealing with. We can all have a little bit of sympathy for Gary Williams and the boys about what they're going through. They get to charter a flight down to Raleigh. We're gonna have to drive tomorrow, so.
Yeah, they're flying down today, but yeah, we'll be heading down the RBC Center, home of the Hartford Whalers. What should we expect? What should we see at NC State?
Well, I think we're going to see a little bit of a different NC State team than we saw up here in a 24-point Terp win. I'm not sure if that's going to be a good or a bad thing, because since they came up here, they were riding high off 3 days after they had just knocked off a top 10 Duke team. They came in here, lost by 24, and they haven't won an ACC game since. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know where this team's head's at. I've not been watching enough of their games to really be able to say. I know they have a lot of talent, and if some of those guys get going that can really help Tracy Smith, that Tracy Smith's going to have another good game. Jordan Williams did a good job checking him up here at Comcast, and he still had a good game. So it's a question of if Javier Gonzalez, Richard Howe, I guess, has been coming on a little bit. If some of those guys can give him a little more help, then the Terps are going to be in for a battle. But I think the Terps have kind of figured it out a little bit here. Duke seems like it was an aberration. Terps are in a good place too, I think, at this point.
Yeah, for me, this game's all about the Terps. I mean, obviously, if you just stack these two teams up under any normal circumstance, put them on neutral court or say something like that, the Terps are obviously, far better team. Terps are more athleticism, they have better players, more veteran experience, and we saw last month how just, the Terps dominated NC State here. It's going to come down to if the Terps can handle this situation, going back down and traveling again in such a short turnover. It didn't affect them last night, but it is a different situation going back on the road. Terps have been much better at home. So, I mean, if they come out and play their game and get their offense going the way they did last night, it shouldn't be a problem. I think they'll win, pretty easily. But if they struggle, if they show fatigue, if don't really know what they're doing, could be a tough game. And NC State's 2-9 in the conference, but like you said, they do have Tracy Smith. They do have a couple players who they can keep it close. If the Terps aren't in the game, might be interesting.
Well, if the Terps come out and play like they did last night, there's going to be a few teams that are going to be able to hang with them. Not the least of which is the team that's sitting 2-9 in the ACC at the bottom of the conference. Grievous really got it going last night with that 25-point first half. If he's rolling like that, they are going to be tough to beat. My big question is, in some of the games that I'm thinking about specifically would be the loss at Clemson, the loss at Duke. The big thing was if they came out, or that they did not come out tough enough to run through their offense, and on a little bit of tired legs, maybe your mind's a little bit tired too. That's kind of the big thing. If they're going to be able to start strong, if you start strong, you get some good feelings going, quiet down the crowd a little bit, then it's going to be an easy game. If they come out with one of these starts that we've seen in a couple of their worst performances of late, that's when you might see a really good game.
We'll see, and it could be a tough environment. I mean, it's not, the cramped stadium like Cameron is. Actually a very large arena, but it was tough last year. I was down there last year when they played NC State. The Terps got the win. Garris had, I think, 33 points, but they were tough on him, and he said after the Florida State game, it was the toughest fancy team since NC State. So they're going to come out. They're not big on Gravis. They didn't like his antics. He shot that 3 at the end of the game last year when the game was out of reach. So it's going to be a tough place to play, and I think you're right. I think they need to come out and start quick to kind of quiet that down. And I mean, all the talk before or after the game last night was showing the maturity of being able to bounce back from the Duke game. They got to do it again tomorrow. That's the same thing, same pressures on them, and we'll just see if they can do it. I guess the next thing we should talk about is just how the difference between the Duke game and the Virginia game. I mean, Duke went down there, probably wasn't the expectation to win, but you'd hope it would have been closer than the 21-point loss. They came back out 2 nights later, played a great game last night against Virginia. What do you think was the difference between the Duke game and the UVA game? I mean, besides the obvious difference in the competition.
They hit shots. Grievous got some help. You saw it 20 seconds into the game. Landon Milbourne swishes a mid-range jumper. As soon as that happened, I wrote that down, into my story that I was going to have to use it because it was just clear that they came out, they were ready to play. They were charged up with, the home fans being there, and they're just a juggernaut at home right now, averaging 19 points, margin of victory, and 5 ACC wins. And they just kind of build off it from there. And if your guards aren't going to be fast enough to follow Grievous around, and you're committed to getting him the ball like they were with, running him off screens and whatnot, that's a pretty good recipe for success for this team. And it was just something that really never, ever got off the ground against Duke, and it certainly didn't, right from off the bat against Virginia.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, obviously Virginia's struggling right now, lost a few games in a row. Their writers last night were saying, they hadn't seen such a bad defensive performance out of that team all season. But at the same time, the Terps really did look good. I mean, I wasn't sure. I mean, after the Duke game, you thought, Duke was a great team. They looked really good up close. But, you can never be sure how that's going to affect the team. And it was going to be interesting to see last night how the Terps handled it and, handled it well. Tomorrow's the big game, though. I mean, now they got that win. They put Duke behind them. But you can't just fall back now. You can't regress against such a team that's so low on the standings like NC State. So I mean, what would a win do for the Terps tomorrow? What would a loss do?
Well, I just got done writing the preview for tomorrow that you can check out in our print edition. And basically, you can look at this as like a really important game because the final 5 games are pretty tough. And you can do a lot of things in those final 5 games. If you make a certain run, you're right there contending for, top 2 or 3 or 1 in the ACC. But if you come out and, lose this game, the Terps' calling card has been their steadiness all season and their ability to not have the bad loss. And if they can continue that, then they're going to be in a good position here in these last 5 games. If they don't, then you kind of go back to the drawing board and start wondering where this team is going to go in the last 5. So tomorrow's important.
It's a big game. If they can get the win, they really put themselves in a very good spot. You think 10 wins in the ACC would just about guarantee them a spot in the NCAA tournament. They have 7 now. They have 3 more home games. They've been great at home, but their 3 home games they still have left are probably their 3 toughest. They have Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Duke. You'd think it'd be tough to win all 3. It's possible, but going 3 for 3 at home the rest of the season might be tough. So you want to have at least one more road win. And, I mean, UVA at Virginia Tech are the other 2 road games after this NC State game. And you think NC State would probably be the most winnable game, even with this tough schedule. So I think it's very important they need to come out and win tomorrow. I mean, like we said, it could be tough conditions, but, they got to do it. So hopefully they will.